Hello everyone, welcome to the tutorial on Spring Fundamentals. In this tutorial we'll discuss on the basics of Spring Framework and the ways to use Spring Framework on our application, and that will be demonstrated in upcoming modules with sample projects. In this tutorial we'll focus on the topics which are segregated in 7 modules. We'll get to know what is Spring, Spring architecture, Spring XML configuration, Spring annotation configuration using XML, configuring Spring using Java, Spring scopes, and at last properties. So let's start with our first module. What is Spring? Spring Framework was started out just an inversion of controlled container. Invert different kinds of controls in object-oriented design to achieve loose coupling, like to create instances of dependencies first and later instances of a class, instead of creating an instance of the class first and then the class instance creating instances of dependencies. It was conceived to reduce or replace some of the complex configuration of earlier Java EE development. Spring was later used, or we say, Spring was later built around using Java and without EJB and provide enterprise development. Spring can essentially be used with or without EJBs. Spring is POJO based, so any code you write in Spring can be written without Spring. Spring is not doing anything magical behind the scenes. It just helps us to write better, cleaner code and doing things POJO based and interface driven. Spring also uses AOP and proxies to apply things like transactions to your code to give those cross-cutting concerns out of your code. So your code should actually be smaller and lightweight from using Spring. It is built around best practices. We end up having design patterns in our code without even realizing we are using them. Things like singleton factories, abstract factories, all these best practices are built into our code inherently just from using Spring. Spring uses template method pattern a lot. It's a, we can say it's not a pattern but a design based methodology or best practice that is annotation based configuration. How Spring solves the problem? It increases testability, maintainability, helps us with scalable type properties code. It develops things and makes it so that we can add things like caching other tools in there without having to rewrite our code. It also reduces the complexity of our code. Now let's discuss about business focus and difference in coding. JDBC in first glance doesn't look that bad, but it has extra stuff just to do simple select statement like connection, prepare statement, result set, try catch finally block, driver manager, and so on. Business only cares about is just to provide an input and grab the actual result. Our code shall focus on testing and the result. If we look into this code, which is written in JDBC, it has connection, prepare statement, result set, driver manager, try catch block finally is there. So it has lot of line of code. And if we compare with code written in Spring framework is just 2 lines of code. So we can clearly see the difference. Now, how this code works with Spring? Everything in Spring is simple POJO. Spring can also be thought almost as a glorified hash map, but it's doing more than creating hash maps in there. Spring is also be used as a registry. We really get the benefits of Spring through its wiring constructs and using auto wiring. Here we finish the introductory module on Spring fundamentals. In upcoming modules, we will cover more about Spring Framework and create sample projects.